So in the present tense, we might have a progressive or descriptive present describing an ongoing action that's progressive, right? So, and how are we hearing in our own dialect? Hearing progressively. If we think that that's how the verb is occurring in a particular sentence and context, then we might describe that verb as progressive or descriptive in its aspect or type of action. Iterative presence. Describe an action that occurs repeatedly. So here's an example from Acts 7:51. You always resist the Holy Spirit. So if an indicator is there that the action occurs repeatedly, then we might describe that present tense verb as an iterative present. Now what we're doing is we're taking what information we get from Bible Works that tells us this is a present tense verb, and we're looking at the sentence that it's in, and we're looking at indicators in the context to see what type of action or what more can we say about that verb. And this is, we can certainly turn to grammarians like Wallace, Daniel Wallace, who has examples of different ways that he has categorized particular tense verbs. But we want to hope that we find something in the context that would indicate. Otherwise, we may want to go with a simpler category, and for aorist that would be undefined. For present, it would probably be just a simple action. But if you think that you can prove that there are other signs indicating that this is an action that occurs repeatedly, then you could categorize that particular verb as an iterative present. Customary present describes an action that occurs regularly but not necessarily constantly. So this would be more of a habitual practice. Occurs regularly, but it's not constant. An example might be Luke 9:23. If anyone desires delay, and if we put our cursor over that in Bible Works, we would see third person singular, present, active, indicative from Thello. He or she or it desires, and anyone is tis. If anyone desires, so there's our present tense verb, to come after me. So this is more of an interpretive decision based on what the sentence is saying. If anyone desires to come after me would be not something that we would do constantly to the crowd that Jesus is talking to, but they might do it regularly. Similarly, a gnomic present describes a timeless fact, like a general principle or idea. Every tree that does not bear good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire. So we've got two different presents, a double verb, a double verbal action here. Cut down and thrown into the fire. This is a timeless fact. This is principle, so to speak, and we can categorize that as because it's in the present tense, as a gnomic present. There are also categories like historic or dramatic presents, where an event that happened in the past is put in the present tense for drama, for dramatic effect. And this is sort of a narrative technique. And having compassion, he reached out his hand and touched him. So here we've got, if you actually were looking in Bible Works, this is an aorist verb. He touched him. It's a past tense. And then suddenly it shifts to a present active indicative. And he says to him, third person singular, he says to him. So why go from the aorist to the present? Well, it's because of this historic present or dramatic present. It's kind of a way that we change tenses in English for more vivid or profound effect, to emphasize something. So historic or dramatic presence. There are also futuristic presents describing a future event, even though it's in the present tense. The Son of Man, paradidotai, will be handed over. Will be handed over. Futuristic, present. Predictive, future. An event that will happen in the future is described. She will bear a son. You will call his name. Futuristic present because it actually, you will call is actually, if we look this up in BibleWorks, this actually is a future. But texetai, she will bear a son. I'm sorry, both of these are actually future tense. So predictive future, we've shifted from present tense. That's what, sorry, I was getting thrown by looking at the Greek, but yes. So future is going to happen in a time frame other than the present, right, already. But she will bear a son, and you will call his name Jesus. So this is more speaking about the context of Matthew, the prophecy being spoken, that it's predictive in nature. In the future tense, we also have an imperatival future. Remember, imperative meant command. So is there some way that the verse or verb indicates that it's a future action, but it's a command? And here's the example. The English translation, and Jesus said, "Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness." So it's a command, but it's out there. It's in the future. It's not happening now. He's not saying do not murder now, because, and we know that it's future because of the form of this infix here. The sigma tells us it's future, as do the endings. But if we look this up on BibleWorks and we simply scroll our mouse cursor again over the word, we would see the parsing and we would see that it's future tense. And this one we might describe as imperatival because it's a command about what the future in a time frame other than the present might bring. Gnomic future describes an event that will occur generally. So we had gnomic present, so remember, kind of like that general idea of a truth, but it's in the present tense. Here it's in the future tense. He answered and said, "It has been written, man does not live by bread alone," or man will not live by bread alone is what the literal translation, because we've got this sigma in the middle of this word. Zao is our root word here, but the sigma indicates future tense. So here's a futuristic general idea or occurrence, way of being. Man shall not live or does not live by bread alone. Then as we transition to the imperfect tense, and remember the imperfect tense is built off the present tense stem. So when you look it up in the lexicon, you actually won't see the imperfect there in those 6 principal parts. But the imperfect tense is a continuous action happening in the past. A progressive imperfect is really a category that we might say, hey, this verb is not only happening in the past and continuously, but there seems to be a progression in the type of action that's happening. And behold, a great storm arose on the sea, but he was sleeping. So these events are taking place, but he was sleeping. So the narrative is progressing, the scene is progressing, and Jesus sleeps on. Progressive imperfect. Iterative imperfect is an action that recurs repeatedly, but not continuously. The Lord added daily to the church those who were being saved. So the Lord added, just something that the Lord has done over and over or repeated, but not, it's not in the present tense, so the Lord is adding. We couldn't go that route as a continuous action, but we can say that it's an action that's repeated. So iterative imperfect is a category we might describe that verb by. So you can see there are numerous categories and ways to describe a verb. Now we're not just looking at it and saying, I want this to be an iterative imperfect or a futuristic, a predictive future verb. You know, we don't just get to decide what category the verb falls in. First, we need to know the tense. Then we need to look at the context and see if there are any other words in the sentence that indicate, for instance, you might have a preposition or something that indicates, or an adverb that tells us he repeatedly or he constantly went out to pray. So we're looking for other indicators around the verb that might tell us what type of action we're looking at. Customary imperfect, and some of these are real similar. They sound the same. So don't get too bogged down on the assignments for this on this topic. Consider yourself free to try some things out. This is a beginning class, and it's not that we are trying to make things be certain things, but you can certainly look at Wallace or other commentaries. Even when we go to look at commentaries, they're often you'll see categories, especially if you're in like the Word Biblical Commentary or the Anchor Bible Commentary for a particular book. You're going to see scholars wrestling over how they are seeing or interpreting particular verbs. So what we're trying to do is help you kind of gain some of that language so you can interact with them. Even though your Greek skills, you may feel very limited in it, it gives you access to the conversation. So customary, each year his parents went to Jerusalem. Well, each year indicates that's helpful to know that this was a customary or a habitual practice. So there's an indicator right there in the text. Voluntative, connotative, or tendential imperfect, actions that someone wishes to do, tries to do, or almost does. How I was severely persecuting the church of God and trying to destroy it, Paul says. Trying to destroy it. He wishes to do it. He's trying to do it. He almost does it, but he does not accomplish it. So those categories for that type of imperfect could be useful there, or a way that we might describe it. If we were writing an essay or a paper or preaching a sermon, this is going to hopefully open up the text to us to see more about what the details of and enlighten us into what the message is. Constitutive aorist describes an action as a whole. So we've transitioned into aorist tense, which again recall is a past tense, the action that's happened in the past, but it's undefined. So we don't often know what type of action it is. So especially in this tense, these categories become important. Describes an action as a whole and does not necessarily say anything about the nature of the action. Well, that tends to be the aorist tense as a whole, but constitutive aorist is a category here. They lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. More holistic, pointing to that past action, undefined. We're not sure exactly how they lived, how they reigned, but we know they did. Ingressive aorist is placing more emphasis on the beginning of the action. Began following. After Jesus departed, there 2 blind men began following him. So that's the focus on the beginning of the action. It's an aorist. It happened in the past, but they began following him. This brings out more particular details of the narrative. Consummative aorist would be more focused on the opposite, the completion of the action. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah has conquered. The completion of the action is more the emphasis here. Like we had in the present and future, we have a gnomic aorist, a timeless truth, a proverbial saying, so to speak, in the aorist tense. The scribes and Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, timeless. And I'll stop right there till we pick up the next video on the perfect tense.